It begins the same way every time, in silence. A woman, sitting alone in the dark, her heart heavy with emotions that aren't hers. The air feels thick, almost electric, as if the entire world's grief has settled inside her chest. She doesn't know why she's crying again. There was no argument, no heartbreak, no reason. And yet her soul aches like she's lived through 1,000 lives of sorrow. That's how most empath women awaken. Not through joy, but through pain. But here's the truth few will ever tell you. That pain was never random. It was initiation. Because the empath woman isn't here just to feel, she's here to transmute. To turn chaos into clarity, wounds into wisdom, and heartbreak into awakening. Carl Jung would say she carries the archetype of the wounded healer, the one who learns compassion by surviving her own suffering. But before that transformation, she must first walk through fire. From childhood, she was the one who noticed the shift in someone's voice, the tension before a storm, the sadness behind her mother's smile. She didn't just read emotions, she absorbed them. Her nervous system became a radar for unspoken pain. And while others built walls to protect themselves, she built bridges. But the bridges cost her everything. Every time she saved someone else, she lost a piece of herself. By adolescence, she had already learned the dangerous art of emotional shape-shifting, becoming whatever others needed her to be: the peacemaker, the listener, the healer, the one who understood. And yet behind that understanding was exhaustion. Jung believed that whatever we repress will eventually surface as fate. For the empath woman, her repressed anger, the anger of being invisible, begins to rise, slowly, quietly, until it erupts as awakening. But here's where it gets dark. Before awakening comes collapse. Everything she's built, relationships, identity, sense of purpose, starts to crumble. She feels disoriented, confused, almost haunted by her own empathy. Why do I feel everything so deeply? Why can't I just turn it off? She asks. But she can't. Because empathy isn't just an emotional trait. It's a form of perception, an ancient, unconscious sensitivity that Jung might describe as a gift of the anima, the feminine soul energy that connects the human psyche to the collective unconscious. The empath woman senses what most people deny, the hidden grief of humanity. And because she's tuned into it, she becomes both its witness and its vessel. This is the part where many lose themselves. They drown in what they were meant to heal. But here's where the awakening begins. When she realizes that her empathy was never meant to enslave her, it was meant to elevate her. Mini hook. And this is where everything changes. The empath woman's deepest pain hides her greatest power. The very emotions that overwhelmed her were the same ones teaching her discernment. The heartbreaks that shattered her were actually refining her boundaries. The betrayals weren't punishments. They were redirections. Spiritually speaking, every empath woman's life follows the same hidden pattern. Absorb, break, awaken, rise. In Jungian terms, this is the confrontation with the shadow, the suppressed aspects of the self that must be integrated for wholeness. For the empath, her shadow isn't darkness or evil. It's her own unmet needs. The parts of her that want to be loved without being used. The voice that says no without guilt. The strength that doesn't need to prove its softness. When she finally dares to meet that shadow, she realizes she's not fragile. She's fierce. She's not weak. She's wise. But here's the part nobody tells her. Awakening isn't peaceful at first. It's messy, lonely, terrifying. It feels like standing on a cliff between two worlds. The old one built on emotional servitude, and the new one built on sovereignty. And most empath women hesitate right there. Because power feels foreign when you've been trained to shrink. Love feels suspicious when you've only known attachment, so she does what all awakening souls do. She withdraws. The empath's hermit phase isn't isolation, it's reclamation. She stops answering messages, stops chasing validation, stops apologizing for feeling too much. She learns to sit with her energy, her silence, her intuition. And that's when she hears it. The voice within that was always drowned out by everyone else's noise. It whispers, "You were never meant to heal them. You were meant to awaken yourself." Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." For the empath woman, this realization hits like lightning. All the patterns, the people who drained her, the relationships that repeated, the exhaustion that never ended, were never coincidences. They were lessons in disguise. Her empathy had been leading her toward mastery, not of others' emotions, but of her own energy. This is the moment she starts to see differently. Her gift was never the ability to feel others. It was the ability to see truth. And truth, once seen, can never be unseen. She starts recognizing energy dynamics immediately. The manipulation behind a smile, the sadness behind a boast, the hunger behind false love. Her perception sharpens to the point that it becomes almost supernatural. And it is, but that kind of sight demands responsibility. Because now she knows that empathy without boundaries is chaos, and compassion without discernment is destruction. She begins to draw invisible lines, not out of fear, but reverence for her own soul. For the first time, she stops saving others and starts protecting her peace. It feels selfish at first, but it's sacred. The empath woman's awakening is not about becoming harder. It's about becoming whole. It's about realizing that love is not sacrifice. It's balance. That understanding doesn't mean tolerating harm. That forgiveness doesn't mean re-entering the fire that burned her. She learns that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone's soul is to walk away. And this is where the alchemy begins. The empath who once bled for others starts to shine from within. Her pain transforms into intuition, her loneliness into clarity, her silence into strength. She no longer absorbs emotions, she observes them. She doesn't chase connections, she attracts alignment. Her sensitivity, once her curse, becomes her compass. But here's the secret few will understand. The moment an empath woman claims her power, she becomes untouchable in spirit. She sees through deception, feels through illusion, and forgives without forgetting. Her aura shifts, her energy stabilizes, and the same people who once drained her now fear losing her. Because they can sense the difference. She no longer needs anyone to feel whole. And that, right there, is the true awakening. The woman who once cried for others now cries for her own rebirth. Not out of sorrow, but gratitude, because she finally understands. Her empathy was never her weakness. It was her evolution. Her darkness didn't destroy her. It delivered her back to herself. But this awakening isn't the end. It's the beginning of a greater truth. One that Jung hinted at, but never fully revealed. The empath woman's power isn't just emotional, it's archetypal. It's the rise of the divine feminine consciousness reclaiming its rightful place in a world addicted to numbness. The empath woman's awakening rarely happens in one moment. It unfolds slowly, like a veil lifting layer by layer. It starts with subtle shifts. The things she used to tolerate now make her stomach twist. The people she once saved now feel strangely heavy in her energy field. Even her body begins to reject the vibrations of false peace. Her spirit, once numb from emotional overload, begins to stir. Something inside whispers, "No more." It's not rebellion, it's remembrance. A remembering of who she was before the world taught her that love meant losing herself. Jung would describe this phase as the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, distinct from the expectations and projections of others. For the empath woman, individuation feels like death at first. Because who is she if she's not the caretaker, the healer, the one who always understands. Every identity she's ever worn begins to crumble, and beneath it all lies a terrifying truth. She has no idea who she really is. And that's exactly where the rebirth begins. Here's the twist that few understand. Her old empathy wasn't pure. It was distorted by conditioning. As a child, she learned that love was something she had to earn. When her parents were sad, she cheered them up. When others were angry, she softened her tone. When someone broke her heart, she found reasons to excuse it. Her empathy became armor. But that armor also trapped her. She spent years absorbing the pain of others to feel worthy, until her soul couldn't hold it anymore. The empath's awakening begins the day she refuses to carry what isn't hers. It's the day she finally drops the invisible baggage she's been holding for decades. And when she does, everything around her reacts. People who once depended on her energy start to pull away. Some grow cold, others accuse her of changing. But she's not changing. She's returning to herself. This is where her power starts to reveal itself, but it's not what she expects. Power, for the empath woman, doesn't come from force. It comes from presence. It's the quiet authority of someone who no longer needs to explain her worth. It's the unshakable calm that unsettles manipulators because they can no longer find entry points in her energy. Her empathy, once porous and unguarded, becomes crystalline, clear, discerning, unbreakable. But here's the part that feels like betrayal. She begins to outgrow people she once loved deeply, not because they are bad, but because their energy no longer resonates with the frequency of her awakening. Some of them still live in denial, still projecting, still hiding behind masks she can now see right through. Jung believed that every awakening soul faces this isolation, the painful awareness that most people prefer illusion over truth. The empath woman, however, no longer has that luxury. Her soul refuses to pretend. Mini-hook. This is where the story takes its darkest turn. Because once she steps into awareness, she can never go back. She begins to sense not only others' pain, but their hidden intentions, the flattery that hides envy, the kindness that conceals control, the love that's really dependency. It's overwhelming at first, like standing in a crowded room and hearing every secret whispered at once. But then, something miraculous happens. She learns to discern without judgment, to see truth without absorbing its pain. That's when she starts to reclaim her boundaries. Not as walls, but as sacred containers for her energy. She realizes that boundaries aren't punishments. They're portals. They allow love to flow freely without distortion. She no longer says yes out of guilt or no out of fear. Every choice becomes deliberate, rooted in self-respect. Her once scattered energy begins to gather. The world starts to feel quieter, her mind clearer, and for the first time she feels something she's never truly felt before. Safety within herself. This safety births clarity. She starts to see that empathy was never meant to make her small. It was meant to make her aware. It was never about absorbing suffering, but witnessing it, understanding it, and then choosing wisely what to do with that knowledge. Jung wrote about the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy gets lost in another's pain, but empathy transforms it into insight. That's what she's learning now. To feel without drowning. To love without losing. But here's the paradox. Her awakening makes her more sensitive, not less. Yet that sensitivity no longer feels like a burden. It feels like power. Because now, when she senses deceit, she steps back without guilt. When she feels manipulation, she stands her ground without explanation. When she detects sincerity, she lets it in without fear. Her intuition sharpens to surgical precision, and people begin to feel it. That quiet, magnetic strength that radiates from someone who no longer doubts their worth. Still, this transformation demands something she never wanted to face. Solitude. True awakening requires stillness. For the empath woman, stillness used to feel unbearable because it meant facing the emotions she buried beneath everyone else's pain. But now she enters it willingly. She sits in silence and feels everything she once ran from. The loneliness, the anger, the grief. And as she allows it all to surface, something extraordinary happens. The emotions lose their power over her. She realizes they were never her enemies. They were messages from her unconscious, calling her home. Mini hook. And here's the secret hidden in her solitude. The more she heals, the more powerful her empathy becomes. But it changes form. It's no longer reactive. It's radiant. Her presence itself becomes medicine, not because she's trying to fix others, but because her energy has become coherent. When she walks into a room, people feel safe. When she speaks, others feel seen. When she loves, it's no longer sacrifice. It's expansion. This is what Jung meant by integrating the self. The union of the conscious and unconscious mind, the light and the shadow. The empath woman's power emerges when she embraces her darkness, instead of denying it. When she acknowledges that her compassion and her rage come from the same source, her capacity to feel deeply. She realizes that her shadow isn't her downfall. It's her depth. And that's when her awakening turns into mastery. She no longer sees empathy as something she gives away. It becomes something she embodies. It's not about rescuing anymore. It's about radiating truth so intensely that everything false naturally falls away. Her energy starts to attract differently. She draws in souls who match her frequency. Those who don't drain but exchange, who don't demand but understand. This new tribe isn't built on emotional dependency but mutual respect. It's the community she always longed for, born out of authenticity rather than need. Yet even in this new light, the empath woman never forgets her past. Because pain was her portal, her scars become sacred symbols, proof that she has felt deeply, survived completely, and awakened fully. Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And she finally does. The empath woman's awakening has taken her through the dark valley of pain, through the lonely corridors of silence, and now she stands at the threshold of something entirely new: creation. This is the part of the journey Jung called transformation through integration. She has seen her shadow, felt her wounds, and walked through her own emotional labyrinth. But now something begins to bloom inside her. A voice she once silenced, her authentic self, starts to rise like a soft but unstoppable tide. It's no longer the voice that says, "I understand you." It's the one that whispers, "I understand myself." At this point, everything around her begins to rearrange. The empath woman doesn't have to chase alignment anymore. She becomes alignment. Her very vibration starts to attract new experiences that mirror her truth. The universe, which once mirrored her wounds, now reflects her wisdom. She doesn't react to energy anymore. She responds with clarity. And this subtle difference changes everything. Because reaction comes from pain, but response comes from power. But here's the hidden twist. This new power doesn't feel euphoric at first. It feels calm, almost too calm. After years of emotional chaos, drama, and overstimulation, the silence feels unfamiliar. She's not addicted to pain anymore, but she's also not used to peace. So, she must learn a new way of existing. One where stability doesn't mean boredom, and calm doesn't mean emptiness. It's a delicate reprogramming of her nervous system, a rewiring of her emotional expectations. In this stage, her empathy becomes a creative force. What once caused her to internalize everyone's suffering now inspires her to express the unseen. Through art, writing, healing, teaching, or even her quiet presence, she begins to translate energy into meaning. Jung believed that creativity is the highest expression of individuation, when the unconscious speaks through symbols, color, movement, and story. And that's what she's doing now. Her life becomes art. Her voice becomes an instrument of transformation. Mini hook. But here's the secret danger in this phase. Just when she starts to shine, the shadows test her again. The world doesn't like awakened empaths, because they can't be controlled. So the old energies she outgrew often return in disguise. Former lovers appear with promises of change. Old friends resurface, reminding her of who she used to be. Society whispers temptations of comfort. You don't need to be so deep. You're too intense. Why can't you just be normal? These are the voices of the collective unconscious, the psychic gravity that pulls awakening souls back into conformity. If she listens, she'll fall asleep again. But this time, she knows better. She recognizes manipulation not as malice, but as unconsciousness, and with compassion, she simply steps back. This is the mark of her evolution. She no longer fights shadows. She outshines them. Her energy now acts as truth serum. Those who can't face themselves will project. Those who are ready will awaken beside her. Her power isn't in confrontation anymore. It's in vibration. The empath woman starts to live with sacred intentionality. Every word, every silence, every act of kindness carries frequency. When she speaks, people feel the weight of her awareness. When she loves, it feels like home. Not because she sacrifices herself, but because her love vibrates from authenticity, not fear. Jung would say she's embodying the archetype of the wounded healer. Her suffering was never meant to destroy her. It was meant to teach her how to hold light in the presence of darkness. But there's another layer to her power, one most people never talk about. When an empath fully awakens, she becomes magnetically unpredictable. Her energy no longer fits societal patterns. People can't quite categorize her. She's too kind to be manipulative, too strong to be submissive, too mysterious to be understood, and that confuses those who still live unconsciously. They may label her as too sensitive, too emotional, or too spiritual. But what they're really saying is, "You make me see myself." Mini hook. This is where her true influence begins. Because once she embodies her healed empathy, she naturally triggers awakening in others. Without preaching, without effort, her presence alone becomes a mirror. Some will rise, some will resist. But either way, she becomes a catalyst. She starts to notice how energy shifts around her. The tension in people's voices softens. The truth comes out effortlessly. Masks fall off. This isn't magic. It's alignment. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's exactly what she's doing. And her authenticity gives others silent permission to do the same. But don't mistake her serenity for weakness. Inside her peace lives a lion. She's learned that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. So when something threatens her inner harmony, she protects it like sacred ground. She's no longer afraid of being called cold or selfish because she knows the cost of self-abandonment. Her yes means yes, her no means no, and her energy no longer negotiates with chaos. Now the empath woman begins to access her intuitive gifts at a higher level. Her dreams become clearer, her instincts sharper, her connection to synchronicity undeniable. She starts to notice how life speaks to her in patterns. Repeating numbers, symbols, faces, phrases. These are her inner world's way of guiding her outer one. Jung called this the language of the unconscious, a symbolic dialogue between soul and circumstance. She's no longer chasing logic, she's dancing with meaning. And yet this dance is not without its shadows. Sometimes her old fears whisper, "What if this peace doesn't last? What if you lose yourself again?" But instead of fighting these thoughts, she listens, because she's learned that fear is simply a messenger. Every fear points to an unhealed fragment of her inner child, the one who still believes love must be earned. So she sits with that child, not as a savior but as a mother. She whispers, "You're safe now. You don't have to be everyone's light anymore. Just be your own." In that moment, something irreversible happens. The empath woman becomes whole. She no longer seeks closure from others because she has given it to herself. The cycle of overgiving ends. The era of energetic clarity begins. She starts manifesting effortlessly, not through force, but through frequency. Opportunities flow, relationships evolve, life aligns, and for the first time, she's not surprised by it. She knows she created it by becoming congruent with her truth. Mini hook. But before she fully steps into power, there's one final initiation she must face. The mirror of her shadow in another person. Someone will appear who challenges her peace, tests her growth, mirrors her old wounds in a new form. It's not punishment, it's mastery. Jung said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And this is her moment of truth. Will she repeat the old pattern of saving and suffering, or will she respond from sovereignty? The empath woman, now awakened, smiles gently. She no longer fears the test, because she finally understands. Power isn't found in never being hurt again. It's found in never betraying yourself again. Her awakening has turned her pain into prophecy, her compassion into discernment, and her empathy into a shield of light.